Hi, and welcome to Far From Home with me, Mabel Nine, your host. This is a continuation of Pirkko's story from the previous episode. So, if you've not yet watched or listened to her story, I would encourage you to go back and check out the previous episode. And we talked about Pirkko's childhood growing up in Canada as an immigrant from Finland and how that affected her identity. And then we also got started on her love story, how she met her future husband, and how their relationship moved from friendship to a romantic relationship. So we're picking up right there. And welcome back, Pirko.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So one thing I noticed from reading your book, about your relationship with Antti, with from the time it started as friendship and then later developed into a romantic one, is that God was involved in every part of it. Like every letter, I don't think you wrote even a single letter without either mentioning God or talking about your faith in some way. So talk to us about that because I felt like, usually they say in Christian marriages, it's not just two people, it's three because God is also a part of your marriage. But I think it should be that way in almost all relationships, right? And I felt that strongly in when I was reading your book and I got a peek inside, your letters to one another. So tell us about how your faith influenced your friendship and your dating.
Well, I don't know. We were just so focused on seeking God and His guidance in our lives because He was very laser focused on just going in God's way. And sometimes I just called him like he doesn't see anything else except God and seeking His will and His purpose and serving God in whatever capacity he would go. And so we were us as individual people. We were already seeking God and wanting to serve God with the best of our ability. And so it just automatically flowed, mostly like probably on my part, and I counted him as more spiritual than I was. And so I trusted his opinions and his ideas. And so we definitely, and the funny part is, even when we were together physically, when he was here in Canada for the summer, we actually did spend time together physically. We were together for about 6 weeks while he was there. And so we would go out out to for walks or for car rides or mountains or whatever we did. We were together, but every time we were together, we would pray at the end before we separated. I don't know. I think my husband was just so spiritual, and I love prayer meetings too, and I love going to pray. And so we enjoyed each other's company in the natural and doing all kinds of fun stuff, whatever we did. But we always added prayer to it because I guess then that is the three people in the marriage developing that foundation already.
So when did you get married? Where did you get married? Was it Canada or Finland? I didn't get to that part of your book yet.
Well, it came to the point. He was there the 6 weeks, and then he went back in August back to college, and I went to university, and then we separated that way, and we continued writing those letters every week. And now this time, that last year, they were more like love letters, but they were very spiritual letters too. So they're going to be in the book. You'll see them, and we always blessed each other and prayed, and we got married he left in August, and in December I went to Finland, and we got engaged. I met his family for the first time, and then we kept writing letters and planning the wedding and all that stuff for 6 months. And then he came back to Canada in July of the next year. So we had our wedding in Canada, and his family came over.
Wow.
Yes.
Um, and then did you guys settle down in Canada or Finland? And what was life like in the first few years of your marriage?
Okay. Well, in the first few years, it was interesting. Everything's so unique about our whole life story. We got married July 28th, and then we stayed in Thunder Bay for a month. And then we moved to Sudbury, where we're kind of, there was another group of Finnish people over there in Sudbury. So my husband at that time, we just got married, and 3 days later, a month later, we moved to Sudbury, where he was going to be pastoring the small group of people, of Finnish people, like having a little home church.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also going to English language school at the college at the same time. I was going to university. So we were both students and pastoring a little group of Finnish people again, I'm still in the Finnish culture. Even though I'm going to university, I stay in the Finnish culture. We have Finnish people at Finnish church. So then we did that for 3 years. But actually, the second year of our marriage, first year was we didn't even see each other very much. His classes were at nighttime, Monday to Friday, from 4 o'clock until 10 o'clock. My classes were from 9 to 4, so we didn't see each other.
Mm.
First year, that's how it was. And then the second year, I moved. This was in Sudbury, which was 800 miles, maybe 700 miles from Thunder Bay, going east going east. And then the second year, we separated. But it was a mutual separation, because I got accepted to University of Toronto. So I moved to Toronto. So for the school year from September to May, the second year, and we were 5 hours apart. So 5 hours driving distance apart. So he would come every second week to Toronto, and I would come once a month to Sudbury.
Okay, so when you said separation, it's not like how, you separate because you want to be, you want to end the marriage, but it's more like you were physically separated because you had to pursue your education. Yeah.
Yes, I had to go to university in another city, and he
Yeah.
stayed there
Yeah.
because he was still faithful pastoring the small church there.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is because you wrote in your book that you did not want to be a pastor's wife or a missionary's wife, but that's what you ended up, becoming. So tell us a little bit about your expectations versus reality. Like, when we are dating someone and we are feeling all romantic, we do have expectations of what our married life should look like. And when we get married, we adjust those a little bit. So was that the case with you? How did that go?
Yeah. Well, in my early years, in my teenage years, I had a negative list of these kind of people I wasn't going to get married to. And one of them was a pastor. One of the reasons for that is, even though I was so involved in the church and so involved there, but I thought that pastors should be a little bit more paid, much better than they were, because financially they were very poor in a small church, immigrant church. And so I thought, well, you know what, I'm not sure that I want to marry a pastor, or even a missionary. I didn't really know what that meant, even being somewhere in a different foreign country. I mean, I had already, as a kid, immigrated, but I didn't know. So yes, we had to adjust our plan, our way of life. And we were so different not in our faith. We were so one spirit, kind of spirit together in our faith, but in our natural way of living. I was kind of more of a spender, and I wanted to do things. I wanted to do things now that I was married. I wasn't at home. I wanted to watch movies and different things. So then he was learning to watch movies too, and different things. And my cooking skills were absolutely zero. We had a lot of craft dinner and cheese and macaroni and hot dogs and stuff. And he'd be used to his mom cooking all kinds of full meals. So I wasn't much of a cook, but we learned together. He was easy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that. So let me ask you this about, you having lived in so many different countries, you having moved around so much, right? How did it change you as a person? How did it affect your relationship with God?
I think, well, moving around and making changes, like I said, we'd lived in two cities the second year we were married. And then after that, we moved again back to Thunder Bay. And then from there, we moved to the States, which is Dallas, Texas, because we were going to Bible college. That was a big move. And I think I was excited about that move because I'd always been a little bit of adventurous, so it was okay in that way. But I was excited about moving to Bible college because I was excited to go to Bible school and learn about God and deepen my faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Dallas, Texas Bible College, and that was fine. But then from there, we were moved to Finland, where he became a pastor there of a church there. So that was a big difference for me because I I was really just wondering and asking God why didn't we stay in Dallas? I wanted to stay in Dallas, Texas. I wanted to stay in the Bible college. I wanted to stay. We only stayed there for half a year, and then God moved us to Finland. So it really developed my faith in finding out who I was. I didn't realize I was so depressed in Finland because my husband was working in a church. He's working and he's away from home, and I had the two little kids, and I didn't know what to do, and I was by myself. I didn't know anybody there. So it really developed me to seek after God, but I didn't know that I could get depressed. I never was a
Mm-hmm.
person. I was very depressed and asking God, why am I here? Well, it developed me to seek after God, and I started praying more in for myself and for our family. But basically, it was a time, it was a time to seek after God. And even when we came back to Canada to Thunder Bay, it was very hard for me to come back to my home church. I didn't belong there either. It was so I had been changed somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So,
yeah.
so for someone maybe going through something similar, how do we hold on to our faith during those times?
I think if we read God's word, and I started reading more of God's word just for myself, not just as a study, not just as a study like in Bible college, you're learning and you're researching and stuff like that. But for myself, it was a time that I needed to learn for myself. And I think if you involve other people as well, ask other people to, share with other people. But of course, my personality didn't want to share about my own life to other people as much. So we did share together, and my husband was very understanding. And so I would say start reading more the Bible for yourself, not for
Mm-hmm.
researching and learning
Mm,
for discipline, for academics, but for yourself.
yeah. And especially during those times when you don't feel like, but you still push through. That has been my experience. I can relate to some of your experiences of not wanting to be where God has put me. But, and the last thing I want to do some days is read the Bible. But when I do push through that feeling and continue to read, then God speaks to me through his word.
Mhm.
Uh,
That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, I wanted to talk to you about, being a single woman and dating, and maybe you have words of advice or encouragement for others who are looking for that right man to marry. So, what would you say to them? What would be your advice?
Well, I think the first thing is, you know, I I didn't know myself at all. Like I was so young. I was early 20, so I didn't know so much about myself. But I think is to know a little bit about yourself and accept yourself as you are. And also, the main thing is don't just start looking for a man, but start looking at yourself and building up if you're a Christian, start building up your faith
Mm-hmm.
and and developing your spiritual life if you are a Christian. And even if you're not, still build yourself up in terms of being a better person and serving others and doing your education. And don't be afraid of what your goals are. Follow your
Yeah.
goals, whatever your goals are, and God will show you as a Christian. God will guide you. And this is what I found that many times we're looking for the outward appearance, like we're looking
Mm-hmm.
external, But I think the key is to look for the internal. Look for the internal, that a man that loves God and seeks after God and has God's heart in him, and also that they're kind and compassionate, and you know that if you did marry a man, you want him to take care of you, or not to take care of you. We are individual people, but I'm saying to be able to be there for you when you're going through a hard time. So, and then the other thing, funny thing is, oh yeah, you can make a list, but don't make a negative list and tell God, don't put God in a box. Tell
Yeah.
God, yeah, I don't want this kind of a man. I don't want this kind of a man. I don't want this occupation. I don't want this kind. Why don't you just tell him, I want a godly kind of man, and just saying something positive. And so, that this man would be somebody who would be compassionate, in terms of being kind and compassionate. So,
Yeah.
and understanding. But I don't know. I think I don't know. Today, dating and stuff, like, oh, don't forget, this was in the 70s. So we didn't do all the stuff that people do. But today we have these what do you call them? Compatibility tests. You
Yes.
compatibility test about, okay, this kind of person would suit me, this kind of person, this kind of man would suit me. Well, maybe we never did anything. We didn't know anything. We didn't go to any marriage counseling. We didn't do anything. But if we had done one of those tests, we would have never married. We would have
Yeah.
never, because we were very different. But
Mhm.
when God put us together, when God did, when God put, I feel that it was definitely God's guidance. It was
Mhm.
so God's guidance, putting two people together. So I want to say one more thing: communication.
Mhm.
I think one of the best ways you learn communication is writing. And this happened to be writing letters with
Yeah.
paper and pen, the old fashioned way, instead of writing on the computer or anything like that. We didn't have computers in those days. So it was very, very, we learned how to communicate much, much better. And I think that has developed in our marriage, that we communicate. We talk about anything, everything. We're always,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what are some of the red flags, do you think? Like if a couple is dating right now, what would be, you say, like, are some of the red flags where you should take a pause and think, is this really what God wants for me?
Well, let me think. I think if you if you don't want to share about some area of your life, let's say financial part of it, if you don't, want to share your finances together, if you are, on your way to being married and you're close to, you've made a serious choice that you think this is going to go towards marriage, and you still haven't shared any financial things, what if the other guy has what if the guy has a lot of debt or whatever? I mean, I had student debt, so then, we'd share those things,
Mhm.
and, you know, things like that. So,
That probably gives you an indication also. Like if you're dating a guy and you find out he's got huge debts, it tells you about his spending habits. And I'm not talking about student debts; those probably almost everyone these days has those. But like credit card debts and other things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure. Those are the practical things that you should talk about. And like I said, even past relationships, if you had, if you had relationships that were hard or abusive or whatever they were, I think you should probably talk about those. And if you
mm,
keep that as a secret, I mean, like we talked about everything, but I didn't, I wasn't really dating or anything before, but it was, I think nowadays, I think you should talk about, where you're coming from, and, um, if you had any relationships that were painful and it just didn't work out. And the other thing, we're still a little old fashioned, I mean, I'm in my mid 70s. So, hey, wait a minute. You know what? Why don't you ask the parents? Talk to the parents what they think. Okay? What they think. I've seen so many relationships fall apart when they're dating, or even nowadays they live together, and it's not working out. One person is very secretive or has their own way, and they have their own own group of friends, and they never actually come together with the same group of friends ever. They never kind of connect together. I don't know. It's just a different way of dating these days.
No, but that's very wise advice, get to know the family and talk to the parents and talk to your own parents if you have a good relationship with them, because all these are guardrails of what you're talking about. And this is such a really good advice that, first of all, have goals for yourself, develop yourself as a person, develop your own faith, your own relationship with God. So that lays a strong foundation when you're starting to look for a person, because God will align your desires to His, and you will also, be inclined to look for someone who loves God, who seeks after God, as opposed to looking for a good looking guy who's funny and, who you get along with. That's seems to be like the basic expectation, and that's fine. But on top of that, what's more important is that the the person should have a very strong relationship with God, and you should be able to see that. And so that's good advice. And if you have a good relationship with your parents, have parents involved, and get to know one another's families and
Mhm.
communicate well, tell each other about your past relationships, and notice how the other person is reacting when you tell them about your,
Yeah. Yes.
relationships. Are they like, do they want to run away from you, or do
Yeah,
they
I
judge
know.
you, things like that. So thank you so much for talking to us about that. Now, I want to ask you one last question about your book, because it's a memoir. And from the little that I know you through your book, that you're a shy person who doesn't like to talk about, feelings and what's going on with you. But you do, tell it all in this book. So, what inspired you to write your memoir?
Well, like I said, definitely I don't like to talk about myself. But what happened was COVID. When we had COVID in 2021, it was in full swell. We were kept at home and we couldn't go anywhere. And we had just moved from, again, another one of our moves. We have moved from Thunder Bay to Toronto, about 1,000 miles away. So what happened was during COVID, we were still unpacking and looking at our boxes and going. We did some during COVID. We had a lot of time. We had a lot of pages, boxes and boxes full of photos. So we made some photo albums. But then that was the end of that part in the winter part. And then in the spring, I just started looking in 2021. I started looking at boxes again, and I found a box of letters, whole box of
Mhm.
letters. And I found the box, and I thought, oh, I'm going to read these. So I thought, okay, I'm going to read these letters. I wasn't sure if all the letters were there. So I organized them into chronological order and read the letters. It took me the whole summer. And then at the end of the summer or during the summer, I thought, well, these are really valuable pieces of information from my past. And I didn't remember what we had said. I couldn't even remember what we had said. I mean, that was 53 years ago. So how could I remember? But as I read them, I thought my family, my siblings or my kids and my grandkids, any other family member, they should, when I'm passed, they'll find these letters and they're going to be left behind, but they can't read them. They can't
Mhm.
read the letters. Most of them are in Finnish. So they won't be, they don't understand Finnish. I read Finnish because I went to school in Finland for 3 years. So I learned and also studied afterwards. And so I thought, nobody's going to read these. They're going to throw them in the garbage. Nobody's going to know. So why don't I write a little, I don't know, a book or booklet or some kind of brochure, or write something to my kids when I'm gone from these letters? Because I didn't want to start translating the letters. It would just take way too long. So I decided I'm going to write a letter. And at that time in the summer, Susie Flory had this group called Everything Memoir, like you said
Mhm.
at the beginning. So Everything Memoir came along, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go check to see if there's any sense in writing a book out of this. I asked and talked to people and talked to Susie, and they said, yeah, that's a great book. That's a unique book.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I got to writing it.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I've been reading it and I'm totally in love with the book. And I highly encourage viewers or listeners to go buy Pirkko's book. It's called Between Us, True Story of Longing. for Love and Letters. And yeah, that's a great cover.
This is me going on my travels.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And before we go, Pirkko, one last question to you is about maybe you can tell us a little bit about Christianity in Finland now in the modern day, and how can we pray for Christians in Finland? What is the state of Christianity there? And is it
Well, I haven't been there for a long time. I haven't visited there, but I think it's much like any other like over here, even in Canada, like a Western country. I think people are turning away from God, and I think godliness is on the decrease. So we need to pray for revival of godly characters and godly leaders in the politicians there. And they just had an election, but I don't know too much about that. But they just had an election, and so I pray for the church there. And I don't know if there's revival going there right now, but I'd like to visit there one more time.
Yeah, I hope you do. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us and sharing your story. And viewers and listeners, if you like a good love story, go get Pirkko's book. It's called Between Us, True Story of Longing for Love and Letters.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.